This episode is brought to you by Puma Running.
I'm really after a new race day shoe. Can you tell me a bit more about the Puma Fast R2?
The Puma Fast R2 are my favourite race day shoe. Now, I ran in these for Chicago Marathon, and I definitely think they helped me on my way to a 4-minute PB where I ran 2:23, just because they save your legs so much, which is obviously very helpful for marathon running.
What do you think makes them so special?
Two things I think really make the difference. Firstly, this carbon plate that you can see extends right beyond the forefoot. That just gives you an extra spring on each step, really propels you forward. Secondly, the nitro foam. This is nitrogen infused foam, which gives you maximum cushioning and maximum energy return. So that means you are more efficient each stride and can essentially run faster for longer.
Okay, I'm sold.
Well, I have great news for our 5 Miles Easy UK listeners. We have a race special discount code for Puma Running. Enter 5ME20 at Puma Running to get 20% off.
Affect running performance with the footwear through the running economy, right? So it is the footwear is absolutely directly affecting performance. If you're putting a bunch of force in the ground and you're able to get in this shoe's case 93% of that energy that you're putting in back, like think
That's
about
huge.
all the energy, that's only 7% energy lost.
If we're saving more energy, if we're recovering better in carbon shoes, should we wear them all the time? If you could design the fastest shoe ever, what would it look like?
That's a very good question.
Welcome back to 5 Miles Easy, and today we're talking all about running shoes. There are so many options on the market now, whether you want shoes for easy days, tempo days, race day, stability trainers, neutral trainers, and that's before we even get into all the brands out there. But a couple of weeks ago, I was lucky enough to delve into the world of shoe science at Puma HQ in Boston, which is where their innovation team sit and they do all their lab testing on the shoes. I found out exactly what goes into making the shoes that we run in, how to find the right ones for you, and we talked all about the science behind carbon plates and exactly why they make you faster.
I think this is so interesting because it's only been the last few years where you've really seen a step up in performance. And I think a lot of that is due to the fact there have been advancements in technology of shoes. And I'm really fascinated to hear what innovation goes into making a shoe faster.
Yeah, it's always in the media. Whenever there's a big race, it's all about what shoes they're running in. But also a very topical point for you at the moment because you're in the thick of preparing for a very big race with Two Oceans coming up. Obviously not your usual course because it's A, longer, an ultra, and B, very hilly. So how has that affected your shoe choice?
That's a good question because actually my training's been very much very similar to what I've done for previous marathon blocks. So I'll have 3 harder days a week, including a long run, and then the rest of the days are easy. So on those easy days, I tend to rotate my shoes just to, not wear down one pair of shoes and also just get a bit of a different stimulus. But those easy day shoes are always something that's cushioned, supportive, and just feels really nice and bouncy, especially, the days after you've been running hard, you want to feel like it's a nice surface and it's going to, absorb any fatigue. So yeah, they're always super comfy shoes. And then session days when I'm running faster, I'll wear a carbon plated shoe. And that will tend to be when I practice my race day shoe as well to make sure that, I know what it feels like and make sure that it feels fast to me because I think everyone's different. You need to find the right shoe for you. But that'll be a carbon plated shoe and it gives a good, return in energy, makes you faster. It's lightweight. And then some of my kind of steadier runs that aren't like super fast, I'll wear not the easy day shoe where it's like super like spongy, but something a bit more lightweight, but not a carbon plate. So it still feels a bit faster, but you're not always training in the carbons. So, to answer your question on if I've changed it for like ultra, I'm still trying to work that one out because I feel like with the downhills, you need something, you're kind of like smashing your feet into the ground. And I'm finding sometimes with the carbon shoes, they're not always like super like spongy underneath. They can be quite hard. So it's trying to find the right shoe where it's like fast with a carbon plate, but also is going to absorb that impact on the downhills.
Yeah, I think a lot of them are really created for running in a straight flat line because that is where the fastest marathons, 10Ks are.
Yeah.
And that's where they want to see the results. So it's an interesting point.
Yeah.
But yeah, you definitely want to see a bit more stability, I guess, to help with those
exactly.
hills.
It's trying to find the right balance. And then, what about your shoes during the week?
Well, I mean, despite our chat on how good hill training for you is, I haven't implemented any yet. So my shoe rotation has been pretty much what I do for normal marathon training. Pretty similar to yours, actually. I have my workhorse easy day shoes, which are my Magnify 2s. They're just like clouds. They're so comfy and just really durable. Can put the mileage in and they just last. Then I use different carbon shoes for tempo and track sessions.
Interesting.
Now, I know that's a bit extra, but the carbon shoes I use for tempo runs are the ones that I would race a marathon in. So the Fast R2s, they're great for going in a straight line, but the high stack on the track, I find a little bit unstable.
Yeah, okay.
So for example, this week I had on-off Ks on the road and I used the Fast R2s. And then today I had some 300s on the track and I used my DV8 Elite 2s, which are still a carbon shoe, but have a bit less foam in. So I don't think they're quite as fast, but for the track, they're actually better, more stable, and you can kind of feel the track a bit better.
That makes sense.
And then for long run, I'm the same as you. I have a middle ground shoe, one that's the DV8 2, which is more durable, but it's actually still got a plate in it.
A synthetic plate.
Yeah. And it's actually a carbon plate, but it's just different foam. So it's a little bit less responsive, but lasts longer and I don't need to be hitting those paces. So that's fine. Mm-hmm. So it is quite a big shoe rotation, which obviously I realise is a luxury, but I personally feel like if I run in the wrong shoe for me, I really notice it in both my recovery and like what hurts the next day. So I actually find it really important to kind of use the right shoes for the right sessions.
No, it definitely is a luxury, but I think if you can try different shoes over time, then you can work out what feels best for you. Because I feel like it's only been in the last year or two where especially for the easy day shoes, actually, I worked out which ones feel really nice when my legs are tired. Because there are some shoes where you still feel you're kind of like slapping the ground, whereas there are some where I actually feel like you said running on clouds a little bit and the pain in your legs kind of goes away, which is perfect.
Yeah, and I guess it probably changes a bit depending on, over the years, your body changes, your strength changes, depending on what, you might move up distances and how your foot lands might change a bit. So it actually is probably good to reassess your running shoe collection from time to time and just figure out what actually works.
Right, so shall we hear from the expert then?
Let's do it. Conor, what do you do here? What's your job at Puma?
Yeah, so I am what's called a product line manager. So I am basically in charge of the full life cycle of a product. So in this particular situation, my products are running shoes, so performance running footwear. So basically when someone kind of asks me like what I do for a living, I basically say I'm a project manager and my projects are running shoes. So when it comes down to like actually managing a running shoe, I start with like when it's just an idea before it's a shoe all the way till it like meets the consumer in the store. It's kind of basically, that's kind of basically the quick gist of it.
Wow, yeah. So do you do the design? Are you involved in the materials? What in every aspect of it?
Yep, so definitely involved in every aspect of the shoe, down to the design, all the way to the way it's marketed, to where the shoe sells, to how much it costs, to how much it costs us to make and everything. Of course, I don't do all of that, but I definitely manage that whole process, basically. So yeah, it's really exciting. It's
Wow.
great. Yeah.
I'd just be interesting to Izzy about the science behind the running shoes, and there's just so much to it, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel like it's something everyone takes for granted. You know, you go on. Obviously, I don't now buy my shoes online because I'm lucky enough to actually test them all and understand it. But so many people just click online and buy a pair of trainers.
Yeah.
But there's actually so much individuality to it, so much that goes into running shoes. So take me through that. What are all the components to a running shoe? What do you actually focus on in building the shoe?
Yeah, definitely. So like I said, it's a long process, right? From start to finish to when it's just an idea till where it meets the consumer. But basically, it all starts with an idea, or like what we call internally here at Puma, a brief. So kind of my job is basically I'll work with, we call it like a pod. So each shoe like is a project, and then it gets a pod. So it basically gets one product manager, one designer, the one who actually designs the shoe, like draws the shoe, draws the shapes, picks out the materials, the colors, all that kind of stuff. And then we have a developer, which is actually the person who works with the factory to make sure that the shoe can actually be made in real life. So they'll work with like the actual factory, source the materials, how much each material costs, how much the total shoe will cost us to make, and stuff like that. So each shoe kind of gets a pod of everyone at Puma who kind of works on the shoe, and it's kind of our baby that we work on together. So it's always a big like team effort between the product managers, the designers, and the developers. So it all starts with an idea. So basically I'll come to them with the idea of the shoe that we're looking to put into the market. So I'll think of the consumer that it's for, where it's going to sell, how long it should last, how light it should be, how cushioned it should be. So kind of give all those targets to the designer and really give them a full, like kind of paint the picture of who I want the shoe to be for. And then they'll design it. And then it starts just on paper, right? Just like a flat shoe on paper. And we kind of go back and forth going through the design. And then we go into the first sampling phase. And that's always kind of the first exciting phase when you actually get to see the shoe in person.
What's the hardest bit to get right on the shoe? Is it, looking at this, you've got like the upper is obviously a very lightweight material, the foam, the carbon plate through it. What takes the most time and the most innovation?
The most innovation is definitely the foam. I would say that's the most innovation, especially now. I would say that's like the most difficult part to get right, and the difficult part to get it right for what you want it to do, I would say. But then so personally for me, the hardest part is the material, like actually the upper material, like the material that's on the shoe. Cause like the foam, I feel like because I'm a lifelong runner, so I've been running for so long, I know exactly how I want the shoe to feel for what I want it to do for the runner. But for the material, like picking them and trying to find out which one is actually going to look good on the shoe and hold the color and hold the shape and be comfortable around the foot and be breathable and all that thing, that's the hardest part for me. So of course we have specific like material and color designers that really help us do that, which is amazing. But I would say that's the most personal difficult part, but then definitely the most innovative processes around the foam, I would say. Yeah.
So the foam, talk me through that. Why is it so challenging from kind of an innovation perspective? How's it changed in your time here?
Yeah, it's changed a lot. I mean, so this is my first product management job. This is like being at Puma is my first, I guess, like corporate world job. So for me here, I kind of came on at the time, I would say, like when things were getting really innovative. So I kind of got in like right at the time where the super shoes and the super foams were coming to like actual life in the shoes, which was pretty cool. But what's happening now is the process is turning to what's called super critical. So before, foaming was really more like you would basically turn like a liquid kind of into a solid, like soft piece of material that would be the midsole of the shoe, that would be the foam, right? Yeah. But now basically it's all about finding, and chemical engineers do all this kind of in the background, right? They find the right chemical, the right like raw material to mix with the right gas. They inject together, so they'll inject the raw material with a gas. In our case, the gas is nitrogen, and then that turns into a foam, and then it's like the process of getting it exactly right to the balance of the amount of like air and space like in between, so the amount of like nitrogen in between the materials here, and then that's how you get like different softness, different responsiveness. You can like tweak all the different materials that are in it and the amount that you use in it. Wow, yeah, it's a very chemical, like it's all chemical engineers and all chemists who kind of work on the background to source those raw materials and kind of mix them together with the different gases to get to the process of to get to the midsole of the shoe itself.
And how different are foams between different brands? Is this so Puma Nitro? Yeah, is that unique to Puma?
Yeah, it is.
So other brands use different foams?
Other brands use different raw materials. They use different processes, different densities of foam, because that's how you can like tweak the different weights of the foam and stuff like that. People use different compounds. It really is kind of a little bit of like an arms race against the other brands, right? Like we're racing against the other brands to find the next best raw material that's going to deliver the best energy return for you, the best cushion for you, and stuff like that too. So
how do you do that?
It's all sourcing, really. So, of course, everyone's paying attention to what everyone is doing, right? So we test every competitor shoe. I'm sure the competitors are testing Pumas. If they're not, they should. And so, it's all basically everyone kind of working together, working with different material suppliers. Sometimes you can look at different industries, right? Like you can look at like what the space industry is doing, look at the water industry, what are the materials are they using, and stuff like that. So you can use different, like look at different industries and see what materials they're using that are innovative, and then see if they can be turned into a foam or a rubber or anything.
That's such an interesting way of doing it. I was listening to a podcast the other day that was talking about that in the context of a different business, but it was basically saying for innovation you can't just look at what your competitors are doing, because you're going to just keep making the same thing.
Exactly.
You've actually got to think outside the box and think what are other industries doing and what can you take from that? So that's so interesting that you said exactly that.
Yeah, it's interesting. For example, like if you look at like a sport like cycling right now, like the cycling innovation is crazy. It's probably one of the most innovative sports out there because there's so many things you can change to become faster. But like if you look at what the tires on a bike used to be 20 years ago, they were like skinny. And they used to pump them up really, really high. Now, if you look at what all the top riders are riding, they're fatter tires that are actually softer, very similar to the shoes. The shoes used to be the only thing anyone ever used to care about with footwear was weight. The lighter weight the shoe, the better it's going to be. But now it's like, what's the balance between all the cushion we can give you and try to keep it lightweight and responsive. So it's very similar to the bike tires, right? Like the shoes are getting bigger and bigger and more cushion, and same thing with those tires. So if you look at, you can see the things in different sports and different kind of industries kind of following each other almost. It's interesting.
Why did... Because it wasn't that long ago that everyone was really into minimalist shoes, and the race shoes were really minimalist.
Exactly,
so why now is it better to have the highest stack possible?
Yeah, I think it's all about recovery, right? Like the more you can protect the body from the pounding that you're putting it through when you're running, 100 miles a week or running a marathon at a really fast pace, you're putting a lot of pounding and a lot of, force onto your body and into the ground. So the more you can protect your body from that force, and then also the more you can harness the energy and get the energy you're putting into the ground back, the faster you're going to be. So it's of course it's about the weight that you're carrying on your footwear, but also if you're putting a bunch of force in the ground and you're able to get in in this shoe's case 93% of that energy that you're putting in back, like think about huge. all the energy, that's only 7% energy lost. That's that will adds up a lot over the course of a marathon,
Yeah.
you know?
Wow. And
Yeah.
how much of that, do you know how much of that comes from the carbon plate? And the foam? Because I feel like a lot of people talk about the carbon plates, but the foam is
Yeah.
actually a bit forgotten.
Yeah, I would say the foam is actually more important than the carbon
Wow.
plate, and carbon plates have actually been used in shoes, like in footwear, longer than the supercritical, like really cushion, really lightweight foams. Because if you look at like track athletes, they've had carbon plates in their spikes for a long time now. Like there's been carbon plates in sprinter spikes and 400-meter guys and stuff like that. So it's really the combination of the two. So the carbon plate basically allows you to harness more energy out of the foam. So it works as it like helps you evenly compress the foam more so that you can get more energy out of it. It also stiffens up the foam and stiffens up the shoe more because the foams now, of course, are softer than they were in past days. And then also the carbon plate stiffens the muscles and in your feet and in your lower legs, and it shifts the load up to the stronger muscles. So like your upper leg muscles, like your hamstrings, your quads, and your glutes are a lot stronger than your calves and your feet. So the carbon plate stiffens all of that and sends the load up to the stronger muscles so you can use more, like the wear you're stronger better with the shoes. So it's all kind of a combination of each other, like coming together in kind of this like perfect recipe to make you faster, basically.
So if we're saving more energy, if we're recovering better in carbon shoes, should we wear them all the time?
That's a good question. I'll say no. Definitely not. I also think that's why it's important to have a strong shoe rotation, is because you don't always want to be loading those muscles all the time, right? It's good to be a 360 athlete. It's why you do cross training. It's why you go in the weight room and do strength and stuff like that. They definitely allow, and I mean, you can probably tell me better than I can tell you, the carbon shoes have definitely allowed you to maybe train harder, do longer long runs, harder long runs, but then also you do need to balance that out with easy recovery runs in softer shoes without the plate to allow kind of those muscles to rest and to kind of adapt differently. Actually, it's interesting that you say that. So we work a lot with Puma Japan, and they actually have told us that some of the coaches who are coaching like the younger athletes in Japan are not allowing them to use carbon shoes all the time because they're young and they're still developing, and they want them to develop strong feet and strong lower leg muscles, and they'll like kind of through maybe like a certain training camp only not use carbon shoes and then slowly introduce the carbon shoes to them like as they're getting into their racing season and stuff. So we're kind of seeing that. Yeah.
So you still want to be able to build up those muscles. Is there anything in only using carbon shoes on race day in terms of could you get more benefit because you're not used to them? Is there any science behind that, or is that purely psychological? Because I know a lot of people who I speak to say, oh, I don't train in carbon, then I get the boost on race day.
Yeah, there's no science behind that. I mean, in my case, I would say that's mostly probably mental.
Yeah.
But I think there definitely is, like, it's all a balance, right? Like, I do think you would, especially in the case of a marathon, your legs need to know what they're up against, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's the hardest part about doing a marathon, is just making it to the finish feeling strong in your legs, really. Like if you train hard enough, most all of us can get through a marathon like aerobically, right? You start to really break down in your legs. So your legs need to be ready for what they're gonna go through. So if you never train in your carbon shoes and then go and just rip a marathon in the carbon shoes, like your legs are gonna be like, whoa, I'm not used to this, and it's gonna be a different load because the way that they treat your legs. So I think it definitely is important to mix them in to your training, but no need to be in them all the time by any means.
What about injuries? Because I think there are two schools of thought here. Some people are saying carbon shoes, better for recovery, as you said, saves your legs, they prevent injuries. Some people are saying, okay, carbon shoes cause injuries, don't run in them. What's your view?
Oh, I mean, injuries are so personal, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't necessarily think I have a strong view on that. It could be the case that if you've never run in a carbon shoe before and then you went and did something drastic in your training with a carbon shoe, you could definitely feel something or tweak a muscle or feel something that you've never felt before because of the way it's changing your stride, because it is going to change the way you run, and you do need to learn how to run with them a little bit. So I think there could be case, but mostly injury comes from weakness or from doing something too much too soon or something like that. It's never really coming down specifically to the footwear. It's usually personal or something, like that. So no strong view on that, but they definitely can help with recovery. And I've always been a believer, even before carbon shoes, I was a believer of a strong shoe rotation to kind of change the adaptation of your muscles and stuff like that. So
with the shoe rotation, the other thing I've heard is you should change your shoes regularly, and especially if you're double running, because it compresses the foam.
Yeah.
Is that true? Never knew if it was marketing spiel or not. But
yeah, no, there is. I mean, of course, we say like there is a durability. Like think about your shoes, like you think about your car, right? Like you put a certain amount of mileage or kilometers on your car, you need to change the oil and stuff like that. So it's similar. Like, of course, we say like maybe a velocity you could put up to 500 miles on it, then you should change your shoes. There, of course, is foam. We call that deformation. That's actually like the scientific term for how much foam compresses and then doesn't come back. It's like the deformation of the foam. So there is some of that, and it could potentially help. I don't necessarily think it would make your shoes last longer or not. They would last longer because you're not running in them every run, not necessarily because the foam's not coming back, is kind of more the theory, I guess.
Got it.
Yeah.
So so Velocity 3, everyday running shoes without the carbon plate, about 500 miles.
Yeah.
What about the race shoes?
The race shoes, we usually say about half of that distance.
Okay.
So about up to 250 miles at the max. Because of course, with the race shoes, we engineer them to be as lightweight and as fast as possible, right? Like of course, we want them to be durable. They're expensive, want you to get your investment out of the shoe if you purchase a race day shoe. But they're also engineered to run your best, right? So we're not necessarily durability isn't our highest priority on the race day shoes. It definitely falls down a little bit compared to how light we want it to be and how fast and how well we want it to perform on race day. So usually we guarantee about not necessarily guarantee, but we say about half of what you would get out of your training shoes, you should get out of your race day shoes.
And it's the foam that would go.
Yeah, the foam and the outsole, the rubber will be thinner, will be lighter weight as well. So, and of course, the upper material will be lighter and more breathable as well. So maybe it'll be more, could be less durable there as well. But we usually, we still want you to get a few marathons out of them because people invest good money in a personal best and they should get a couple races out of it for sure.
So we all know how important good nutrition is to fuel our running performance, but one thing I get asked about a lot is how to fuel training sessions, because gels can be quite hard to tolerate and quite hard to get used to.
Especially as a lot of sports nutrition is heavily processed with artificial ingredients, not always that great on the stomach. But recently we've been trying Velo Forte and loving it, haven't we?
We have. Velo Forte is a natural way to fuel your performance. Their gut-healthy bars, recovery shakes, and performance-enhancing gels and chews are all made from real, natural ingredients with no junk and additives, easier on your stomach, and overall better for you.
And they taste delicious too. Chef-made recipes and so many incredible flavours. There's something for everyone, for every activity.
Favourite product?
My favourite product is the energy bar. Really good straight after a session or on the go.
I love this one. This is the recovery shake, and they just taste so delicious after a hard training session.
Thanks to Velo Forte for supporting this podcast. Head to veloforte.com and get 30% off by entering the code 5miles at checkout. That's the number 5 and the word miles.
So how much would these retail at? Something I should probably know as a Puma athlete.
Yeah.
But because I don't buy my trainers, I've got an excuse.
I know. They're 260 euros.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that is actually, some of the carbon plated shoes now are just insanely expensive.
Yeah. I would say that's kind of middle of the road now. Most of them are around that 250 range. Some of them get up higher than that, or maybe a little bit lower. But
it's crazy. Why do they cost so much?
Yeah, it's a lot of technology. You know, it's like it's our most expensive foam. It's got a full carbon plate in it. It's our most expensive upper material. So for us, it also does. We invest a lot in the footwear, right? We invest a lot in the research. You know, you went in the nitro lab. That's all an investment into creating these shoes, into creating the best experience for the runner. So I think it's just the higher the technology. It's like anything, right? The more we put in, the more it costs everybody. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you actually? Is the markup any bigger on these than the everyday shoe, or is it just costs double to make it?
It's just the balance. Yeah, it's just balancing out. Yeah, it's not necessarily like we're saying, oh, we know people want to buy these because they're gonna make them faster or whatever. It's literally just the balance of business, right?
Yeah. Wow. I mean, there is so much science that goes into them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think there was obviously a huge leap forward with the carbon plates?
Yeah.
Massive jump up in times, jump down in times.
Yeah.
And the innovation. But what's like the curve looked like since, is there going to be another big leap forward, do you think? Or is it kind of flattening out?
I think it's definitely, I don't think we're going to see a curve like we've seen in the past 5 to 10 years in a while. I do think it is going to flatten out a little bit, and I think it's also been a little bit of a perfect storm of everything. Like, I think the shoes are definitely like you saw today, like you can directly affect running performance with the footwear through the running economy, right? So it is the footwear is absolutely directly affecting performance, but then there's also so many other things that are coming up now that are making people faster, right? Like, I also think the shoes are allowing runners to run more, to run further, to run harder, to work out more often. I do think that's part of it. So everyone, not only are the shoes affecting performance, but they're affecting the way people can train. But then also people are training smarter now, right? Like, people have access to better coaches. There's Strava. So you can go on Strava and you can look at all the training that all the professional athletes are doing, and you can emulate that yourself in your own way. There's access to training logs and social media and everything. And people talk about double threshold and all these different types of workouts and stuff. So I think right now we're actually kind of at this like perfect storm of technology in the footwear, but also training and fueling and everything is also at the best it's ever been. So I think we're kind of in this really cool, perfect storm of everything's coming together at once. And then we also have we're just seeing amazing, talented athletes across all sports, including running. And also, I would say it's like skewing younger as well. Like, we're seeing a lot of younger athletes run super fast. Like we can't believe these teenagers are running this fast and stuff like that too. So I think it's a movement, you know?
Yeah. It's so interesting, isn't it? I wonder how much of it is a psychological component as well. Like, Roger Bannister breaking the 4-minute mile, and then everyone starts to do it.
Yeah.
And then all the times start coming down. There's a lot of talk around the Olympic qualification standards, and when they first come out, everyone thinks it's impossible.
Yep.
Only
Definitely.
In the men's 5K in the UK, only a few people have done it in history.
Yeah.
And then suddenly the standard's set and people start doing it.
Start doing it. Yeah.
And then more and more people are like, okay, well, if they've done it, I can do it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's such an interesting combination of factors. But obviously, the shoes have advanced so much that inevitably that has to be such a big component to the times coming down. I think especially over something like the marathon, because so much of it is how much you can endure the fatigue.
Yeah.
And recover from it.
And recover from it. Yeah.
And get through it. But so for the everyday runner, how do you choose shoes? How different are they, and what can you look for? Say if you're buying, if you're not really fixed to a certain brand, certain style, you just want to try a whole load of things. Like, how do you find out what works for you?
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is definitely go to like your local running store. That's always the number one thing I'm going to say. That's what my background is from, kind of like local running store, run specialty. So definitely go to like your local run shop. There you're going to like meet other people who run. They're going to have staff that know about the shoes. They're going to have a great selection of running shoes. And there you can kind of get educated on the landscape and get like a bunch of different options. People can watch you run. They can look at your stride, they can look at your foot strike pattern and all that kind of stuff, and really help you select a shoe based on what you need. Because I think that's the biggest thing. Like your favorite shoe might be different from my favorite shoe, or my needs in my foot strike might be different from yours, of course, right? So I think that's the number one thing, is definitely go to a local running store, meet the local running community, and work with the staff to kind of find the right shoe that's best for you. But then also, like, you can get away with doing a lot with just one pair of shoes, right? Like, so I think if you just find a shoe, and I always say you should choose the shoe that when you put it on and go for a run, you don't think about, that's the shoe you want.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
And do all of your sessions in that if you want to.
Of course. Yeah. And then if you find yourself really enjoying the experience and the process of running, and then you kind of want to try something different, or you feel like, oh, I need I see these people in these other, like, maybe racing shoes or training shoes that are helping them with their sessions, then that's when you start to like branch out and dabble a little bit more in different shoes for different usages, right? Because we make the race day shoes that are specific for marathon racing, but then we also have something like the Velocity that's like your do-it-all trainer, and then we also have the Forever Run, which is the shoe that's more stable, right? So if you're someone who needs more stability in your foot strike and in your stride, you would go with Forever Run instead of going with Velocity. So that's how you can kind of choose your shoe based on your needs. So number one, it's based on usage. So what are you going to be doing in the shoe? How much are you going to run? Where? And then the other thing would be like, what type of runner are you? Do you need something more stable? Do you need something more cushioned? And it also just comes down to like personal preference, right? Like, what do you find comfortable underneath your foot? Because some people, everything's trending up to more cushion, but some people don't want more cushion or don't like more cushion. It just feels bad to them. It doesn't make their legs feel good. They want to be closer to the ground. So it also just comes down to personal preference. So it's nice to be able to try different levels like that, levels of cushion, different types of shoes, and different types of brands as well, because you never know if a Puma could work for you or not.
How do you know if you need stability? Or
that would be where you would figure that out, like with the local running staff or whatever. Like if you had some like overpronation, like the term pronation. So if you had some like overpronation, maybe you would want some more stability in your shoe to help like kind of guide your foot against that overpronation.
When you're telling me all of this, I'm just thinking it's crazy how many people just go online, and I used to do that all the time.
Yeah.
I used to go online and just buy a pair of running shoes.
Yeah.
And it would normally be, the ones that are on sale.
Or the ones that look nice.
Yeah, the ones that look nice. And now I know all the science to it. I'm like, no, it's so important to get the right one.
Yeah, it'll make a huge difference. Like, I have people ask me all the time, like, oh, I don't know how, like, you like running, like I hate to run. Like I'm always never feel good when I run. And of course, I'm a shoe guy, so of course it's the first question I ask. But I'm like, oh, so like, what are you running in? Like, what shoes do you have? Where did you get them? And I ask like all these questions. And I'm like, no, listen. Like, you need to go to a store. You need to talk to somebody. Try on all the different shoes, because that's also the cool thing about going to a store is you can try so many things on, right, and kind of get the experience. So. Yeah, it is.
And it's the same with running in really worn out shoes. So many of my friends running in battered shoes. And I'm like, no wonder your feet are hurting and you're not enjoying it.
Yeah, you got to replace them. You got to invest. Yeah.
What about different models? So going back to buying online, I used to buy everything from the sale.
Okay.
Not the latest model. How much actually changes? Should we be getting the next model? Obviously, if you can, and if you're invested and happy to invest in your running, like how much difference does it make?
Yeah, of course it depends from shoe to shoe, but we try to always make the upgrades, right? So like when we find, like, I talked about all the innovation behind the foam and behind, materials and stuff like that. So if we find something new that's lighter but still just as cushioned, or something that's more cushioned but still lighter weight, or something that's more durable, we're going to put it in the next one. So we actually are always like relentlessly trying to improve the next one. And we do listen to feedback as well. Like, we have a huge wear test program. We listen to the athlete feedback. We read reviews online, and we send shoes to reviewers who review shoes. So we also listen to the feedback, right? So if there was something about the Velocity 2 that you didn't like, hopefully we fixed it in the 3, and then now you'll like the 3, right? Like, so we do. So I would say there are some cases where definitely like you can get away, like if you have a shoe you like and it's worked for you and you happen to come by a sale, like go for it, get the sale. If you like the shoe, like why not pick up another one? Because I know runners are also creatures of habit, right? This shoe worked for me, I got to get this one again. So then we also know that, so like I also don't want to change a shoe too much, because then if there's a shoe that runners really love and there hasn't been any bad reviews on it, or it's sold really well and people are coming back and buying more, it's like, okay, we're going to stay really consistent. So I think that's actually one of the goals of Puma and running now is, previously, before, we've kind of, especially when it comes to distance running, like we've always been in track and field. We have a very rich heritage in track and field and have always been consistent there. But when it comes to like distance running and creating running shoes for the everyday running consumer, Puma's been a little in and a little out, for the past 75 years. But now we're all in and we're going to be consistent. And what you expect from one shoe to the next should be consistent or just slight upgrades that are just going to improve your experience.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely been my experience since I signed.
Right.
The first couple of shoes were quite different. They were big upgrades.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And now it is slightly more, marginal. Although having said that, my tests in the lab were exciting because
exactly.
the next model, which we're not allowed to name, was gave some really cool
really
results.
exciting. Yeah, and I think that's the other thing. So when you look at something like race day innovation, right?
Yeah.
Like that's where we're going to push more, because like that's the difference for you being on the Olympic team or not, right?
Yeah.
And that's important to us as a brand. It's important to you. But with the everyday shoes, you're going to see less of that, because it's more about consistency, kind of building the franchise, building the trust with the consumers that they can come back and get the next Velocity or get the next Deviate and still be in love with their shoe, because runners build that real relationship with their shoe, right? So you're going to see more upgrades in things like race day, because we're really just pushing the envelope for the athletes and trying to make everybody as fast as possible, even the everyday consumer. But then with the regular running shoes, you're going to see like a little bit, maybe just more consistency and more kind of just slow but sure improvements to just make the shoe just improve your experience. Yeah.
How far ahead of you? How far ahead of the curve are you in terms of
I mean, about
design?
2 years. Like you saw today, we were showing you some shoes that won't come out until 2025 and stuff like that, which is crazy. Yeah, so we always work in the very deep in the future and do plenty of wear testing and gather feedback and make small improvements here and there. But yeah, we're usually about like 2 years to 18 months.
So it takes
in the future.
2 years to test and perfect a running shoe.
Yep. Yeah.
That's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
It must be, in a way, frustrating to have that and not be able to get it out, especially when you've got competitors. Because you always want to be ahead of brands.
Mm-hmm.
And if you know you've got something that's ahead of other brands, then you want to get it out there, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it can be a frustrating process. Usually it's not that way. Like usually we're on pretty good timing. There are some cases where we will realize that and we'll make a quicker change or do some things within the brand to push to get it to the consumer sooner, because we know it'll make a difference, or get it to the athletes sooner because we know it could make a difference kind of in their career or in their next race. So we will do that in some cases to really push the boundaries, but yeah, it can be tough to be kind of on that cadence of like, okay, here we go. Here's my next idea for the shoe. Like, and I have to wait 2 years until someone can experience it. It can be frustrating, but it's all just part of the process, Nothing can happen fast. I mean, it's all about making sure it's up to the right standards, so the quality standards, the performance standards, and then also just giving time for production and stuff like that. And also it takes time to, it takes time to onboard everyone at Puma, right? Like we're a global brand. We meet with all of the regions around the globe a couple times a year and show them all the new shoes and educate them on the technology and the seasonal stories and the marketing and all the different concepts. So we also, as a brand, like you need time to slowly build everything out, everything from just the concept of the shoe all the way to how it's marketed, photo shoots, capture the content, all that stuff. So there's a lot of moving parts that kind of go into like the shoe actually being in the store and like seeing it online and being marketed to you and stuff like that. Yeah.
The behind the scenes is just fascinating.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah.
Just so much that we take for granted that goes into, just one shoe, and then you make so many other shoes in so many different sports, and then apparel, that it's just
Yeah.
so many cogs in the machine.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Shoe innovation. So obviously, some of it is limited in relation to the race shoes with World Athletics rules.
Yeah.
If they didn't exist, what would the fastest shoe, if you could design the fastest shoe ever, what would it look like?
That's a very good question. Man, what would it look like? It would probably look crazier than this.
Okay.
That would be my guess. I don't know. That's a hard one. It would be...
Carbon plates, let's start with that.
It would probably have more than one carbon plate.
Okay.
That would be my guess. It would maybe have more than one. And it would also, the foam would maybe be higher, maybe not, because if you just add more foam, it just gets heavier. And then, you got to kind of balance that. That's a good question. It would look crazy, but I'm not sure. That's a good question. We have some concepts that we work through, and sometimes we talk about what's the what's the shoe that's breaking the rules, what's the rule breaker, because the rules don't matter to everyone. They matter to you, and of course they matter to World Athletics, and they matter to the kind of they matter to the core of the sport, the pureness of the sport, they definitely matter, but they don't matter to everyone. There's people who could just go run a marathon in any shoe they wanted, and World Athletics isn't going to come knocking on their door, asking, hey, what'd you run in today to get your PR? So there is definitely, we do think about that. We're ooh, what's the crazy innovation that we could put out there for the regular person, just so they can have a fun and exciting experience outside of what World Athletics tells us where we need to be. So we do think about it, and that, it's maybe not necessarily my job to think about it, but I do get excited about it, and I think there definitely is a future from the brands in that space. I think that's a space that we talk about, that we want to, it's almost like a playground space for the brands, right? We don't have to be constrained by those rules all the time. We can play outside of them and kind of go for it. And even if you do that, you can influence what you're doing here, right? You could maybe learn something that you could put into a shoe that would be under the World Athletics rules just by playing outside the lines, kind of thing, and getting creative.
Yeah, I would be so excited to see that.
Yeah.
And I mean, it would be fun to run in it, obviously not in a race.
Yeah.
But just to experience, how fast can you go in a shoe?
I know. Yeah, it would be fun.
Conor, thanks so much. That's been so interesting learning.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Definitely.
The science and technology. I'm just mind blown by how much goes into it.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely going, I already came from a place of understanding a lot of what goes into my shoes, but I think now I've got a whole new level of appreciation.
Yeah, absolutely. And you got to experience what it's like to actually put on the mask and get on the treadmill and test everything, which is that's what we do on a daily basis with runners of all different abilities. But to be able to have you come in and kind of experience that is also a great experience for us, but also for you. So it's awesome.
Yeah,
it's awesome
and see the
to
science.
collaborate, right? And to be part of the science for yourself and see how it's going to affect your results. So,
definitely. And I think obviously I know the carbon shoes work because I've raced and trained in them for several years, but I think having that science to really back it up and know exactly how much they improve my efficiency is mentally so helpful going into a race. And I know I've got these shoes that are going to make me go fast.
Yeah, definitely. It's a huge confidence boost. Absolutely.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you.